rainy Monday morning. We'll blame the rain, right, Kristen?
Yeah. We
Blame the
got to
rain.
blame somebody, right?
Gotta
Or
blame
something.
somebody. So, good morning and welcome to another edition of Mental Health Monday on Monday, May 18th, 2020. A little dreary outside, but it was a beautiful weekend. I'm joined once again by my great friend and really this whole city's great friend, Kristen Boyce. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Jensen. Thanks for having me this morning.
Appreciate you being here. We're both wearing our power red on a Monday. Didn't coordinate that, but we're excited to be with you all here today. Just a few ground rules. If you're joining us, say hi. Let us know you're watching. We love to hear from all those folks. And I know you're out there because I get stopped on the street. People telling me how they're breathing through their day, which is exciting. I have some people that I run into say, well, I have a good friend that needs to listen to Mental Health Monday. I said, well, tread lightly on that, but have them come join us on Monday at 11. We're here today to talk about kind of what's going on in the world, how we're going to process through that. Kristen, before I get started, I want to point out something special about this morning. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month in the state of Indiana, which is very timely. It's a time that I think every month should be Mental Health Awareness Month personally. But hey, we'll celebrate it in May. So I want to announce this is our first proclamation in Noblesville City Hall here under the Jensen administration. And I am proclaiming that May is Mental Health Month. So we'll be sending out a release later today to highlight that. But it is firmly declared here by the office of the mayor that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So, Kristen, thank you for joining us in that. But we're gonna actually memorialize this with a proclamation here in City Hall to declare May Mental Health Month in the city of Noblesville. So, I wanted to get started with that little layer of bureaucracy there, but very exciting nonetheless to formalize that. So again, I'm joined by Kristen Boyce, my good friend who is the owner of Pathways to Healing here in Noblesville. She has graciously given her time again this morning to join me to talk about mental fitness in our community during this time. And so let's get right away started on that. And I know what you're going to have us do. Kristen, take us through a breathing exercise to get us centered and focused this morning.
Yes. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I hope this can be of service to you and loved ones and friends and families and neighbors into our community. The first thing I teach with whoever I work with, whatever client I work with, and my team at Pathways to Healing Counseling is we all start with our feet on the floor. And we're going to do a breathing exercise that you can do if you have tuned in every week. You've already heard the spiel. And if you haven't and you're new to it, this will be our first introduction into learning how to do deep breathing. And what the purpose of the deep breathing is to calm our nervous system. So we're less reactive, we're more centered, we're more calm, and we're more grounded. We're not in the survival state of the brain, which is fight, flight, or freeze. We are in the higher centers of the brain to say we can handle this, to create safety within our own self, within ourselves and our bodies. And so we can have deeper, better connections with those around us and ourselves. So we're going to do what we call square breathing. We're going to inhale for 4. We're going to hold for 4. And we're going to exhale slowly out the mouth for 8. So let's practice together. We'll do 2 breaths together, and then you can continue doing the breathing on your own at your own pace. So we start with our feet firmly planted on the ground. This helps us to begin to get centered. You can do this anytime, any place. Pressing through your feet. We're going to inhale for 4 through your nose. Hold for 4. Exhale for 8. Let's do one more together. So inhale for 4, hold, exhale. And just try to check in, just notice the difference. Again, you might feel a little lightheaded if you're not used to doing this. And I recommend doing this every hour, doing at least 3 to 5 breaths. And that helps, again, to regulate yourself so you're less reactive, you're less triggered. And if you are triggered, you can do this very first step. This is what I do. I walk around the house breathing. And what happens is my kids start to do it as well. So I'm mirroring what it looks like to regulate myself, because that's all I can control at the moment is myself. So instead of flipping my lid, my little brain model, flip my lid means fight, flight, or freeze. I'm trying to stay regulated to the higher centers of my brain so I can respond in the healthiest way possible. So this is key to regulate anxiety, depression, PTSD. It's a piece of the puzzle. It's not the whole puzzle. It's the piece to the recipe. So I hope it's helpful to everybody.
That's awesome. I will tell you, and Kristen, you can probably relate to this. On Friday night last week, we have been trying to eat together as a family more regularly, just to kind of check in with one another. Just if anybody doesn't know me personally, we have 3 small kids. 2 are in daycare during the day. One's at home e-learning. My wife's a teacher. So that just gives you kind of a picture of the dynamics in our family. Kristen, you have 2 daughters. So you can kind of relate to this. But on Friday night, we were sitting down to eat for dinner. And the typical thing happened where every kid had an opinion about dinner and whether they liked dinner and what they wanted for dinner. And the noise got louder and louder and louder. And my beautiful wife, Julie Jensen, made us all stop. We all took a breath together. We exhaled, we cooled the cookie, and we got ourselves regulated. So I still don't think anyone ate the dinner that my wife made. But regardless, we had the conversation. I know so many people across the city of Noblesville can relate to that story. And I also tell it because my youngest is 3 years old. He was breathing in and breathing out. So I know it can be done all sorts of ages. So it was a good practical example for us. So I want to dive in and talk about a topic that I think is near and dear to so many people's heart right now. And if you are a parent of a high school senior or a parent of an 8th grader or a parent of a 5th grader, right now you are faced with a big piece of disappointment right now, knowing that graduation Noblesville schools came out, great partners of ours with kind of an alternative graduation plan. I know that was disappointing to some. So today we're going to talk about disappointment and how we work through that. And actually, I had a good friend of mine, Megan Euler, who's a teacher at Noblesville High School today. Her dad, Tony, is a long time. The Euler family is an institution in Noblesville. He's retiring this year. And she brought up, for my dad, it's kind of a disappointing time, kind of a letdown to retire. And this year, you don't get nearly the accolades and fanfare of a huge distinction of a career coming to an end. So we're going to talk a little bit about disappointment. But if you are a parent or you are one of those kids that are listening, that's a senior, an 8th grader, a 5th grader, let us know. I want to see some typing there going on in the comments. Let me know that you're here and listening because we want to touch on that a little bit. So Kristen, can we talk a little bit how we work through this time of disappointment, that things are changing, that you're not going to get your typical graduation. It's not going to be normal. And so how do we work through that? Because I've heard all weekend long from parents who have shared their thoughts with me, and I welcome those thoughts. But how do we work through them?
Yeah, first let's acknowledge how hard that is because we have this vision, a movie, so to speak, of what we dreamed of, whether it's college graduation, high school graduation, to see our kids and for the kids themselves to see, that's an achievement. That's like crossing the finish line if you run a marathon and that fanfare of crossing the finish line and having those supporters go, yay, and cheerlead you on. And let's acknowledge that it is disappointing, but underneath disappointment, this is what most people don't know, is grief. So underneath disappointment is sadness, anger, kind of some disgust, maybe even some denial, some bargaining, some fear. But underneath it, it's pretty deep emotion of grief. We're sad. And it may take us a while to be able to connect to that sadness and not be able to, have that experience that we hoped we would have, because that's really what it's about. We want the experience and we want our kids to have that experience. And when we feel like the experience was kind of robbed, so to speak, we kind of feel like there's this betrayal. There's this disappointment. There's this feeling like I got gypped. Like, hey, I got gypped, whether it's whatever that is. If it's a retirement, you feel like, oh man, I was really looking forward to that. So that core feeling of excitement and joy that comes along with those celebratory events, we start to go, oh my gosh, they don't get to have that like I did. They don't get to walk across that stage, grab that diploma and see everybody in the audience. They don't get to throw their hat up and have that shared experience where all we've all been to graduations where we throw our hats up in that whole experience of that. Even though it might not have been a great experience, we still have hopes that our kids could have that experience. And so we have to acknowledge that there's grief in this, and it's okay to have your own process around it. It's okay for your kids to have their own process around it. It may look different. They may not have as much grief, or they might have more grief than you do. They might have more disappointment. And it's important to honor everybody's process. And my process might look different than my neighbor's process. And so a lot of times we'll go, well, they seem okay, and I'm over here a wreck, and I'm a mess over this, and I'm angry, and I'm sad, and I'm so disappointed. But, so-and-so over here looks like they're just fine. And I'm like, it's okay to have your process. It doesn't have to look the same. And so when we can acknowledge that we're sad over people not getting to have that full experience that we had hoped for, it's okay to go, yeah, it's okay for you to be sad. It's okay for you to be mad. It's okay for you to be disgusted. Whatever the feeling is, that's how we move through it. If we don't acknowledge it, we're not moving through it. We're stuck in it. And so as a community, if someone says, I'm having such a hard time, I go, yeah, I get it. Let it out. Let it out. It makes sense that you feel that way. It gives people permission to have their process and move through it. If you ever see a toddler, well, you have toddlers, so you know this. What they'll do is they'll have their feelings and and if you go acknowledge it, then they're off doing the next thing. Mm-hmm. They've processed it. They've moved on. But what we are taught and culturally conditioned out of is our process and our feelings. They're like waves. We just have to ride the wave, and the wave will come and the wave will go. The wave will come and the wave will go. And we can go, oh, there's the wave. There's the wave. It's okay. And if we acknowledge it, then it moves through us and stays stuck inside of us. And so if we do not allow us to have our process, you will stay stuck in disappointment. You will stay stuck in anger. You will stay stuck in wanting to blame and move away from the experience. And when you can go, it's okay, then we move through it. And we begin to go, okay, I'm going to accept the as is, because that's all I can do right now. I'm going to acknowledge the process of somebody else. When I'm processing, it's very hard for us to acknowledge someone else's process because we're in the middle of our process. And so we go, well, they don't get it. They don't understand. And I'm like, you got to understand that it's okay to have your own process, because not everybody knows how to acknowledge. They don't, because they're in their own process. Mm-hmm. We're like, well, they don't get it. They don't understand. I'm like, that's because they're in their own process. Your process is different than their process. Mm-hmm. You acknowledging your own feelings, you giving yourself permission to let it out. Super important right now. So,
and I think one of the roots that we're here today to discuss too is that focusing on yourself. Know that if you need to process a certain way, it is okay for you to process a certain way. You don't need to go online and let somebody else know that their process is not okay. We see some of that sometimes on social media. You process what you need to do, and you have every right and to be able to do that. So focus on yourself and let yourself move through those processes, because I cannot imagine, and I Chris Jensen can't sit here and imagine what it's like to be the parent of a senior or to be a senior saying that. I can't relate to that, but I'm going to respect you that it's a tough time for you and be here to support you. And that's what we're here all to do too. So Kristen, yeah, go ahead.
I think there was a good point you made in terms of one thing that came up for me when you were sharing is making sure you're not projecting your feelings and thought processes onto somebody else and then judging that. So we can get reactive, and then we can get angry at somebody else and their process. And we don't want to do that, because that's displacing your process onto somebody else. And so if you have the urge to whatever it is to react, take a breath.
Yep.
Wait, why am I talking? So wait, why am I talking? Wait it out. I check and I go, okay, what is that about for me? Take a breath. So take a pause. If you do feel like somebody has triggered something within you, take a pause first. It's my invitation. We're all heightened right now because there's what I call trauma shock. It's like we're all having a parallel experience of kind of some trauma, so to speak. And when we can go, okay, let me pause. Let me take a breath before I respond, like instead of reacting, responding, because trauma shock is something we're all going through. This is shocking that we're having to do this. It's shocking we don't get to go have our normal graduation. It's shocking we don't get to say our goodbyes. I think that's really important for us to acknowledge with our kids, whether to college, high school, middle school, elementary school, preschool. I don't care what age it is. They didn't get to say goodbye. I can feel emotion right now. They didn't get to say goodbye to their teachers that they love. They didn't get to say goodbye to their classmates in person. They didn't get to have that kind of what we call closure, the goodbye, the transitional moment. We're missed that transitional moment in person, and we want to acknowledge that. I've talked to my kids. I can tell. I'm like, I do check-ins. I'm like, how you doing? How you feeling? And they're like, yeah. I go, are you feeling sad that school's almost over? Yeah, we didn't get to do Flat Rock. We didn't get to do, our trips, and I miss my teachers. I'm like, it's okay. It's okay to have your feelings. It's okay to let it out. Acknowledge it. Let's not sweep it under the rug, but let's not either project either. So my experience might not be my kids. That's why I call them check-ins. So I don't go, you must be so sad. And they're like, I'm not sad. I'm fine. I go, how are you feeling? What's that like? And they might not have words. And I go, okay, well, if you do, let me know. I'm here. Yep. They might be like, nothing, I'm fine. And I'll go, okay, well, if you want to talk about it, I'm available.
Mm-hmm. Give them the opportunity. That's exactly right. Exactly right. Well, thank you again I know that was such a timely topic. I've heard about it this weekend. I know people like Angela Miller and Megan Wiles and others who have commented that have seniors, processing through that. I think this is great advice for you as parents to think about and let your students process. I've got to give a shout out to not only Noblesville teachers, but all the teachers in the community who have gone above and beyond. I know my son's third grade teacher, Colleen Jacobs at Hazeldale, stopping by today to give him an air hug and drop something off from him. Talk about above and beyond. Our teachers are amazing. They are frontline workers in this. And so I just genuinely will just offer my heartfelt thank you to them during this time as well. So I want to pivot and talk about e-learning a little bit here. But before I do, Kristen, I have a little surprise. So when I got in office, as you can imagine, January and February, we had awesome plans for our administration. And then things changed a little bit. But one of them was I want to take time out throughout the year to recognize community members who are going above and beyond. So we have developed an award called the Partner in Progress Award that we're going to be giving out. And to be honest, we haven't given any out yet because we were trying to figure out how to live in this COVID world. But I want to give my first Partner in Progress Award out today to my good friend, Kristen.
Oh, that is so kind.
Above and beyond to offer her time to the community of Noblesville, a community of which I know that you love. But it is time that you're giving away from your clients here. And at the bottom, there's a quote from Theodore Roosevelt that says, what a man does for himself dies with him. What a man does for his community lives long after he's gone. And I think what you are doing, Kristen Boyce, for your community is going to live long on beyond you and my time around here. So you are our first Partner in Progress award. And it's one of these days I'll give this to you in person, but it is well deserved. So thank you.
Thank you. Wow. This is just my heart. My soul is to come on and try to be of service somehow. And so thank you. I feel very humbled by.
Yeah, we're humbled to have you your time. So thank you so much. And it means a lot to all of us. So, well, let's pivot and talk a little bit about e-learning because I know, hey, we got 3 days left. We're almost there. Parents, we're almost there. Students, we're almost there. Let's talk a little bit about last piece of advice. And then also maybe, Kristen, how can you help your child transition on Thursday from being an online student to now being a kid in summer? That's an interesting transition. To some, it may not be a bit hard transition. Others, it may, you're going from structure to non-structure. And we can talk a little bit next week more about how to keep some structure maybe in our daily lives over the summer. But let's talk about some e-learning tips and then maybe how you help your child process Thursday and what that looks like for them.
Yeah, I think one, acknowledging the finish line here for them, encouragement, and say, wow, you really did it. We're at the finish line. And I think that's really important to acknowledge that and to offer that piece of encouragement for them. And I love the and. I'm all about the and acknowledge the end, that this is a transition. And what is that like for them? How do they feel about it? They may or may not want to share with you. That doesn't matter. Again, everybody has their own process, including our kids. The fact that our role is to say, I'm available. if you want to talk through your feelings. And some kids are going to have some struggles because that's their connection to their teachers, and they don't get to go back in as of right now and go get their stuff. They don't get to go back in, and at some point that will be the case. But this is a transition of not only the e-learning, but now we're transitioning maybe even to another building. And we want to acknowledge that because could be some fear around that. There could be or maybe they're going off to college. And so now they're not going to be, or maybe they're graduated from college and going into a job. So you see, there's a lot of more depth to this than we realize. So when someone's like, I'm going to miss my building, drive by the building. Go to the building and go, okay, let's do, and it may sound cheesy. I'm all about the cheese. I'm like, let's drive around the building and let's say, if you want to take a picture in front of the building, let's do that. If you want to put your cap and gown on and get in front of the building, let's do that. If you want to, just kind of walk around outside, if we're allowed to do that, I think we are. Let's do that. Let's have some closure. Maybe they want to go to the outside of the new building. Okay, let's kind of try that on. What are your fears around this? I like the question of what are your fears, because we don't ask that. I don't want to bury the fear. I want to bring the fear to the light and transform it. So let's talk through it. Let's move through it. So I'm going to say, what are you afraid of? Well, I'm afraid that, I won't know my way around. I'm afraid that I won't see my friends anymore. I'm afraid that I'll miss home. I'm afraid. And I go, yeah. And I'm afraid what to expect in the fall. Right now, we're all, including our children, are trying to learn to embrace uncertainty. It is something I'm practicing in my own life, to embrace uncertainty, be in the moment. And we do that through these waves of processing these feelings and acknowledging the fears in the midst of it. And so I think that's really important as we're closing out e-learning. Keep breathing, keep self-regulation as your number one as a parent, and children acknowledge their process, acknowledge these transitions that we might not think about. And if they want to write their teacher a note, encourage that. If they want to, they're like, I'm done. And you're like, okay, thanks for sharing. It doesn't have to look like they got all these feelings. If they're like, I'm good, I'm like, well, thanks for sharing. That's okay. We don't have to have like all these feelings if they don't have them. Some kids are totally fine with it. Great. That's okay too. So that's my invitation for everybody during this time, is to be present enough in your own process that you can be present enough for your kids or somebody else, a friend. It doesn't matter. And go, it's okay to have your feelings. It's okay to let it out, because there's a lot more to it than we think. I mean, when we kind of think about transitions, we don't think through, oh, now they're going to a different building, or maybe they're going to be driving to school and they're used to riding the bus. And what is that like? Maybe they're going to ride their bike. Maybe they're still questioning, am I going back to school next year? And we talk through the uncertainty of that and go, it's okay. We don't know. How do you feel about that? What's that like for you? Well, I just want to know if I'm going to be, with my friends or whatever the case may be. And I go, yeah, I get that. It's hard with uncertainty. We're teaching our children how to deal with uncertainty. And if we're not comfortable with it, which all of us struggle, I'm learning how to do it in real time. Of course, this is the evolution. That is helpful to help our children with transitions because it's uncertain.
Yep, you're exactly right. That's great advice going into this week, because we have some big transitions for a lot of folks at the end of this week. So take a moment, take a breath, and like I said, next week we can talk a little bit about maybe how we transition to summer and how we work with our kids to get into a summer routine. Before we head out, I want to touch on one last topic. A good friend of mine, Teresa Lorenzen, commented on something that I think is very important. We've talked a lot about kids today, but she and her husband was scheduled for an elective surgery before, and that all got canned. So you're mentally preparing for an elective surgery or surgery, and then all of a sudden it gets put on hold and you're ready to go. And now we're going to phase back into, okay, we're going to do it again. So that's a wave of emotions, right? How do folks that are in that boat kind of deal through those feelings? So that's something I didn't even think about. That would be very hard to process.
Absolutely. And I'm seeing a lot of that right now as people are going and they're afraid to go to the hospital too. So we have that piece. And I think one is acknowledging that. So, okay, this is tough. I'm having a tough time. Now we're supposed to go in and possibly not have this surgery, and the fear of what does that mean if I don't have the surgery? And how do I feel about that? And consulting with the doctor. This is an important part I'm really encouraging people to do is don't be shy about calling doctor and asking questions, because we kind of get like, well, he told me to wait. I'm like, it's okay. Call the doctor, ask questions, get the information you need. That's really important that I encourage people for assertiveness, especially with their healthcare right now. I'm like, you gotta ask the questions that you need the answers to help calm your nervous system. Information doesn't always calm our nervous system, but then we can adapt and kind of figure out, how do I deal with this? What is the timeline here? And we might need more information in order to be able to deal with what's in front of us. So the second thing is that fear. I think people are afraid because they do need elective surgeries. Some people, I know my mother-in-law needed a root canal. And we have to deal with going in, and how does that work? Going into the dentist, but we're in pain. So we have to take care of ourselves. So it's that, again, that breath is your friend. I can tell you the breath is your absolute friend. It will help you. It's not a magic wand. And then to acknowledge your own process, talk through it, let it out, acknowledge this wave of grief you're in. We are in a collective, what I call collective shock right now. We've never experienced anything like this. I've seen symptoms of what we call COVID sleep. And that's where our sleeping patterns are changed. Eating patterns, COVID eating patterns have changed. So we're seeing some universal things that are happening. Now research is starting to take a look at this that are impacting everybody. And this is one of them. These surgeries, elective surgeries, doctor's appointments, going in there with some fear and trepidation, that's all new. Now we might have already had some trepidation about surgeries, and and now we add this on top. So I just want to acknowledge how challenging that is and say, I see you and I hear you, and that makes sense that you feel that way. So it's important we are acknowledging each other. I can't emphasize that enough. It calms that nervous system down, because we go, well, something's wrong with me. I shouldn't feel like this. Well, look, they're dealing with something over here. And I'm like, it's okay. You need to be able to process this. Then you move through it. So just know that makes sense that you feel that way.
Yep. Well, like I said, and I've said from the outset, life's hard anyways. Life is difficult and tricky, and you add this in, even more tricky. I know I had 2 COVID donuts this morning. So
there it is.
It is what it is, right? And we're gonna have to work through that. Things are different. My good friend Raquel McNew, who is a teacher at Hazelden, just pointed out it's important to point out the positives of this time too. Focus on that. I can tell you, our lawn has never looked so good. We are eating dinner together. We're praying before meals. The things that we probably didn't have time to do back in the day, we probably did. We just neglected. We're really doing so. Focus on the positives as well. But I can tell you, last week I went to lunch 3 times in a restaurant in Noblesville. And I applaud our restaurant owners who are safely and boldly reopening, doing so in a proper way. I went to the dentist, got my teeth cleaned, 36 years in a row, no cavities. I will note.
Whoa.
Yeah, right. I'm pretty proud of that. But I will say they're all taking the precautions. But again, I was ready to do that, but I know not everyone's ready to do that.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
You got to do what feels good in your nervous system.
Yep.
It doesn't have to look like everybody else.
Yeah. And I think like I said, I just want to give a kudos to our restaurant owners, our small business owners, our dentists, our doctors who are adapting. They're ready when you're ready. So take care of yourself. I'll also point out the City of Noblesville launched a new website, cityofnoblesville.org/COVID, or reopening resources rather, that has some great tips on there for businesses if you need any help as well. So Kristen and I, we will not be back next week live on Facebook because it is Memorial Day. But we'll have a special announcement later this week on something that we're going to do on Memorial Day, surrounded by focused on mental health. So stay tuned for that, and focus on your mental health every day. But join us next Monday in some alternative ways. Breathe, share stories with us about how you're breathing next Monday, and look for some new announcements. But Kristen, my new partner in progress. You've always been a partner in progress, but now you're officially deemed a partner in progress. Thank you for your time to the community. Everyone stay safe. Don't forget your umbrella. Don't forget to breathe and take care of yourself. So thanks so much, Kristen.
Thank you.
All right. Talk to you soon.